Happy, the ASCRS Master Class. Today, I will be joined by Rosa Bracamelli, my co-moderator, as we bring you Module 4, which is a topic we really don't speak enough about, and that's how to be really efficient and effective when we are trying to do patient education and counseling. At the end of the symposium, remember that we divide our faculty into 3 rooms virtually so that you can ask plenty of questions, and they will be moderated by Rosa, myself, and Rich Tipperman. And then remember also that immediately after the CME program at 1:15, use the separate link to get onto the corporate sponsored symposium. It is not CME, but these are designed to complement the CME programs. They're all archived on the website, where you can now view the first 3 of these and see a list of upcoming programs. And today, Tracy is sponsoring a webinar on wavefront aberrometry to evaluate the optics of the cornea and the lens, which I will moderate with a star-studded faculty. We, of course, want to thank our sponsors. Besides Tracy, they include Alcon, Zeiss, Allergan, Bausch & Lomb, J&J, Lenzar, Novartis, Ocular Therapeutics, RxSight, Star Surgical, Centricity, EyePoint, LensGen, Sun, Rendia, and Surgiorhythm. And we also have unrestricted educational grants from Alcon, Allergan, Centricity, J&J, RxSight, and Omeros.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to introduce our first 2 video recorded talks. There will be 2 video recorded talks, and then a 12-minute panel discussion will follow that. The first 2 talks is one by Steve Slade on understanding refractive patient psychology, and our second talk is by Bill Wiley, pre-consult and preoperative patient education.
Good morning. I'm Stephen Slade. Many thanks to David Chang and to Ascaris for asking me to give this talk. I don't usually lead with a slide of myself, but I felt like my gray hair gives me a little bit more credibility in talking about refractive patient psychology. I want to do this a little differently. I want to do it in first person as a patient, a refractive surgery patient. I haven't had refractive surgery, but I think this might be the best way to convey my understanding of their psychology. You know, you show me all this stuff about your results, and that's all well and good, but what I really want is 100%. I want perfect safety. I don't necessarily want to take the risk, and I already have that option, and it gives me reversibility. Of course, that option is glasses or contacts. So you've got a tough job to talk me into having a risky, expensive procedure where I might not be able to get back to the way I was. So we are demanding, we refractive surgery patients. We may have unrealistic expectations. Sorry, we didn't go to medical school. We want perfect vision. We want that right now, and we'd like for it to be for free. I mean, sometimes you advertise it for free, almost. Sure, I've been a self-refractor. You've left the room. I've brought the phoropter in front of me, or whatever that thing is called, and I'm spinning the dials. A lot of us have written questions. Get over it. 18% of us have anxiety disorders such as OCD. Who doesn't? Panic disorders or even phobias. Here's what we want. We want excellent, uncorrected visual acuity. When Steve Schallhorn's data, he shows satisfaction against LASIK uncorrected visual acuity. Look at how 2012, 67% are very satisfied, whereas 2020 is only 46%. Every line makes a difference. There's a lot of data. There's been a lot of papers and research on the patient's perspective. And really what that means is how we view you, how we view the procedure. And one of the things that has generally agreed upon about the patient's perspective is the importance of physician listening. It enhances diagnosis, healing, the doctor-patient relationship. I want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to me until I'm ready for you to leave the room. Now, for some of us, you're recommending a refractive lens exchange. We don't have an understanding of cataract risk. We thought this was going to be like LASIK on the outside of the eye. We're going to like this better. We're going to be more appreciative of the outcome if we go from a higher refractive era, especially, of course, farsightedness. And it'd be nice if we had a little bit of a real cataract to get that improvement, maybe some night vision improvement. Because I'm telling you that my accommodation is hard to give up. Moderate, low levels of myopia is kind of hard to give up too. You've at least got to give me excellent near vision. And you've got to give me excellent distance vision too. And I've also got to have good intermediate vision, because that's where so much of my life is: cell phone, laptops, dashboard, and so on. So what about presbyopia correcting IOLs? That's refractive surgery. For those, it's the Botox, Viagra, Rogaine, collagen, Restylane generation. And I can tell you we're going to be unwilling to go gently into that good night. We're demanding, we're wealthy, and we're willing to spend that money on ourselves, or we're willing to spend it against you if this doesn't work out. We do view aging as weakness. We want LASIK perfect vision right now. It's what we had before, and we'd like to have that for free. Yeah, we have unrealistic expectations and we don't understand risk. Again, get over it. We want choices, just not too many. A lot of data, a lot of research has been done on patient choice, consumer choice. And the bottom line is that I don't want you to offer me too many choices. In fact, whether it's jam or clothes or chocolates or probably refractive surgery, if there's too many choices, I will rate it as a less valuable, less enjoyable experience. FOMO, it's fear of missing out. We highly value potential missed opportunities. So in closing, it's refractive surgery. You're doing it on healthy eyes. Patients are paying for it out of pocket and they're expecting perfect. The last thing I would leave you with that helps to understand the refractive surgery patient psychology is that we are all refractive surgery patients. Refractive surgeons have refractive surgery done to themselves more than any other identifiable group. So when you're sitting there talking to the patient and deciding what's best or this or so, what would you have done yourself to your own eyes? Thank you for listening.
Hello, this is Dr. William Wiley. I'm going to talk about pre-consult and preoperative patient education. I'm the medical director of Cleveland Eye Clinic, a division of Midwest Vision Partners. These are my disclosures. In general, when we approach a new topic, we have to ask ourselves, what is our goal? And in general, often it's happy patients. We want to deliver happy patients when we do new procedures or cataract surgery. And so we ask ourselves, how do we achieve that goal of happy patients? And one of the key aspects is meeting or exceeding patient expectations. That's, it sounds easy, but in modern day cataract surgery, there's a lot of sort of elevated expectations. A lot of patients are coming in thinking cataract surgery is free, or all surgery is done with a laser. Some patients think, I won't have to wear glasses after surgery. Well, they'll say, well, I already paid for LASIK years ago, so if I already fixed my glasses problem, maybe they have other underlying medical problems. They think, you know what, I'm going to get this premium lens. It's going to solve all my problems like macular degeneration or glaucoma. So we have these expectation hurdles that we need to get over when we approach cataract surgery and patient education. One of the failed expectations Nowadays, in the past, it was simply just an unhappy patient. But now, with the age of the internet, that patient can tell the world and kind of erode your reputation that you've built, you've put so much effort into building. So we want to really kind of make sure we're meeting or exceeding patient expectations. So if we can all agree that expectations are a concern, how do we realign patient expectations? In the past, we used to say, okay, we'll just hand them a pamphlet and it'll talk about cataract surgery, and maybe that should do it. Now I think we've moved on from simply handing a pamphlet. I don't think that's quite adequate to educate, the nuances of what's going on with modern day cataract surgery. So I see this as a multi-step process of education. Number one, you kind of have to determine what are you offering with your cataract surgery, sort of package or approach. And some people can, more go with an approach of offering technology. They might say, or a femto, or an Aura, toric IOL, and you pick and choose and maybe sell individual technology packages. What we've chosen to do within our practice is offer outcomes. And we try to say, okay, what is your goal with cataract surgery and how do we achieve that? Do you want better distance, or do you want better intermediate, or better near, or a little bit of all those things, and dynamic, full range of vision without glasses? So you have to kind of understand what's your approach going to be? What are you sort of selling to your patients when they approach cataract surgery? Educational opportunities, like I discussed, there's pamphlets, but there's other opportunities. You have the web, educational seminars, patient counselors, optometrists, videos, PR. There's new software that we'll talk about today. All these things can help educate your patients throughout the process. I also see that it's more, in the past, it was a one-way, sort of education process where you're just giving patients information. Now I see it as a two-way street as far as communication. You want to gain back what is that patient looking for so you can tailor your approach to meet or exceed their expectations. I do see there's a lot of new technology in the education space. Here's just a few, to name a few. We've got Surgery Rhythm, Navigate, TouchMD, Checked Up, MD Backline, Patient Education Concepts, Ocular Innovations, all these new technologies that can help you throughout that education process with your patient. Like I said, in the past, there's more sort of one-way, or there are a lot of one-way communication technologies out there. In the past, it's all we relied on, but there's still some great options there. For example, Patient Education Concepts does a great way of distributing software to help that patient understand what are they getting with cataract surgery and what their goals might be. But let's move on, use that, but also start a two-way communication so we can gain information back from that patient. For example, we're using a product in our practice called Surgery Rhythm that helps start a dialogue with the patient so that the provider knows what that patient's looking for. The way it works, it starts as an education process in home, but that patient fills out a survey that then the provider can see and understand and tailor their response to that patient. For example, we get to see how likely is that patient going to upgrade, how likely are they going to schedule cataract surgery in general, what are their priorities as far as glasses, so we can gain all this information and then tailor our approach before we meet or see that patient. Also, we can track the data to see, how many patients are filling out the survey. Are they happy with filling that out? Do they feel like they're getting value throughout that process? Other things that we see coming out, now in a post-COVID world, we see telehealth solutions has really helped, bridge the gap of communication. I see that these interactions may allow for a more convenient care, and it may prove critical to patient education to have that telehealth process. For example, there's one new software that's come to the market. It's called Navigate. And basically what Navigate is a new eye care specific relation management platform that facilitates a concierge level education experience for patients and fosters relationships between providers and referral sources by connecting multiple systems like I've mentioned today into a seamless platform. So I think that we're really going to see them utilize telehealth to help educate our patients throughout the process. Checked Up is also looking at telehealth as a solution. We've known them as far as a piece of the education process within our office, but they're also exploring a telehealth platform. As far as communication and follow-up, a lot of times we spend a lot of energy on the front end of that patient education journey, but there's also a back end to that. For example, there's a software called BirdEye that can help gather patient experience and help them share that experience on the internet with patient reviews. And I think that's a key aspect. It can also identify unhappy patients, so you can sort of curtail that before it becomes a problem. MD Backline also provides sort of a seamless communication on the front end, but also the back end, so you can see how is that patient doing throughout the process. If there's issues, you can help address those issues before they become serious problems. Yeah, optometrist referral, their softwares that help generate that. One is called Ocular Innovations, Inc., and they created a great platform to help integrate the referral process from your optometrist to your practice and also integrate an education component to that. So in summary, we look at education as a multi-step process, taking into account the referring optometrist, cataract seminars, online resources, telehealth interactions, informational surveys, back office communications, and online review generation. In conclusion, we feel that technology can be utilized to provide focused education, and educated patients have more realistic expectations, allowing physicians to have an opportunity to meet or exceed those expectations.
Well, thank you both for terrific talks. We have our first panel now with Mitch Jackson, Rich Chipperman, Dee Stevenson, and Bill Wiley. Bill, that was an amazing overview. There, I had not heard of most of those companies that you have. But I think what I'd like to ask our panel are, what are your pearls for starting this education process in advance of the consultation and so forth? Because one thing we don't know, you cannot just launch into this for the very first time in the exam chair and have the patient really make any kind of informed decision. Mitch, do you want to start?
Yeah, so Bill uses all those platforms. I don't know how you keep them all organized. We use Checked Up in the exam lane, which is very helpful, so our patients get educated on, and we kind of customize our Checked Up for the options we offer to our patients. And so all the technicians who work up patients start the education process. They've already filled out a lifestyle questionnaire, which I'll be talking about in a future talk here later this morning. But we get an idea already what they're kind of interested in, or from the referring optometrist, we have a fast track form that the referring OD fills in, and they kind of know all our options too. So the referring ODs speak the same language as we do internally. So if it's from the referring OD, we kind of already know about what they want, or from their lifestyle questionnaire, and then we kind of do Checked Up, and the technicians start the process to get them educated early before they even see one of the doctors.
Dee?
Well, I do the Checked Up as well, and I have them fill out a lifestyle questionnaire as well. But the one thing we always refer our patients to is our website, because on our website we have a lot of information that helps them get started. So they know, in my area, it's a very competitive area. I'm in Florida, so there's people are looking for, do you do femto? Do you do crystallines? Do you do whatever? So they're really specific on what they want. So we always direct them to our website, but we also answer questions, based off their lifestyle forms. But a lot of it is done. It's all teamwork, and it's done. And I'll share that with you in a little while. But it's all teamwork. It's from my office staff to my surgical counselor to myself. And my technicians. We all speak the same language. So the same answers are given to the people, and if my office staff doesn't have an answer, then they say, let's talk to the technician or let's talk to the doctor about that. So, I've customized it to my own practice. I have a boutique practice, so it's high technology and state of the art. So it just depends on where you are, I think, too, your location and how people look at you.
Rich, let me ask the question a little differently. A lot of our viewers are going to be comprehensive ophthalmologists. They're not heavy refractive practitioners, but they're doing cataract surgery. And is there a certain amount of minimum education that everyone should have about refractive IOLs? And if so, what are the essentials? We've heard some very high-tech ways to get a lot of information across. What are some of the essentials that someone really has to do to be able to even offer refractive IOLs?
Great question, David. And I think in many ways, it's actually a very simple answer. We've seen a lot of different systems and technologies that people can use, and certainly they can work well in practices. But refractive IOLs or advanced technology IOLs have been around now for over a decade. So patients have an awareness of them. And I think, you know, we had a great lead-off talk by Steve Slade, certainly arguably one of the most well-known and best educated refractive people in the world. And what did he talk about? Speaking to your patient and listening to your patient. And that's what every comprehensive ophthalmologist can do. And ultimately, I think all the different technologies, online, computer assessment, patient surveys, they're all important and they help. But when the rubber meets the road, the most important thing still goes back to what Steve Slade pointed out, the doctor-physician relationship and that pre-op discussion. So anyone can access that because that's something we do for all our patients. And then it's just really giving the patient a balanced discussion of the surgical options that they have. And that's not selling, that's educating, and that's something we do for all our patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I think is the patient absolutely has to know as early as possible that there are these options that are not covered that they would have to pay extra for, because that puts them in a totally different mindset that there are options. And then to your point, you know, Steve Dell, I think, got us all started with these lifestyle questionnaires. And what a great way to have the patient think about this, communicate it to you, and then you at a glance can see a whole lot of things that you need to know. And then I think there's just so many steps in terms of figuring out based on that what they need and so forth. But I think pre-visit or pre-consult education, you know, is so important. So let me ask Bill, you know, I think that, you know, we do it much like Dee, trying to send everybody to our website, which is very customized, but this is not really possible for everybody. So which of those technologies, Bill, do you think are worth looking at in terms of doing the pre-consult education?
Sure. I think Surgery Rhythm does a good job on that pre-consult education. What's nice is it sends them an email, starts a survey, and within that survey, there's videos depending on how they answer it. If they have, let's say, a history of LASIK, or if they have a history of macular degeneration or something like that, we have customized videos that are launched to that patient to have a, you know, sort of my standard maybe explanation on LASIK or macular degeneration or glaucoma or whatever it might be gets sent to that patient so they understand before they come in what's maybe unique about their eyes or maybe unique about their goals. So I think that's a great option. Pre-COVID, we did a lot of cataract seminars where about once a week we had a seminar going on somewhere within our region. We had patients that would show up multiple times to those seminars to really understand cataract surgery and the options and the choices. And I think that worked really well. We've transitioned that a little bit to more sort of Facebook Live and internet seminars. And I think those are good, but maybe not quite as good as the live experience. So I think everybody's mentioned, you know, the earlier you can start that education process, the better. So I think it is key to plant the seed early so that before that, you just can't be, you know, the day of the consult, that being the first time they've ever heard about any option. I think that's challenging. So if you can start it earlier, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't use Surgery Rhythm, but I'm impressed that as a turnkey solution for people that haven't developed all these other items, it's pretty neat. And I think people can find them on our list of sponsors, but I love the list that you gave. Let's switch to the patient. I love Steve kind of presenting the patient's perspective, because I know that, you know, we all so often think about, gosh, I am so behind schedule, and here's someone that is going to take so much chair time. How can I get through this as quickly as possible? This is stressful for people. I mean, I think it's more stressful certainly than the eye surgery part, which freaks people out. But now they've got to think about, I got to decide which of these things I'm going to have the rest of my life. So let's take the patient that we've all seen that, you know, they've got 3 pages of questions when they come in. And for them, this must be a nightmare having, you know, 8 different options. How do you try to simplify it for people? Anybody on the panel? How do you?
So Dave, I can start. So we only, as Steve said in his talk, which was very critical, there are so many options. When the patient leaves, between their subjective responses on the questionnaire, talking to the patient and examining our objective data to see what they actually qualify for clinically, we always let them leave with two options. The basic option, which is just getting the surgery and still wear glasses, or whatever advanced premium option. We pick one for them. We give them an education packet to take home with them with information about that one premium option, just to simplify it. This is the only option you qualify for other than the basic option. And then they have time to go home, talk to their family, the cost of it. There's education materials. They come back for what we call a scheduling visit with our surgery counselors. So we give them plenty of time. They'll probably have questions. We can repeat testing if we need to at that visit. And so that's been working really good for us. I think it takes away the stress for the patient. At the time of their scheduling visit, one other thing we do is we have a secondary consent form that a patient has to sign what option they select. So they release or admit they're signing off that they were told about another option. So they can't ever say they were never told about other options that were out there. So they mark, legal to drive option or basic option, whatever, and they were told about the other ones.
Another question, the audience poll showed that the #1 educational medium is our audience is giving company brochures to the patient about the different lenses. How many of you are sort of customizing your own handouts or descriptions of the IOLs, or is it okay to do the company brochure? Dee?
Yeah, I don't do the company brochure quite as often anymore because it's too scientific or it's too general. So I do it from the pathology of the patient and what they want, and what they're eligible for. And that's how we kind of do it. And really my surgical counselor is the one that spends the most time with them. Sometimes 2 hours. Sometimes the patient comes back in 2 or 3 times before they make a decision. And, we are all, again, we're all on the same page, but it's a kind of an individual thing. I don't use company brochures anymore because they have the videos from the different companies that you can use the PEC or the site, whatever it's called, site something, another site, the videos. And those are real customized from the companies, and those are better. Those are better, and they actually can show it. But I also use my own technology to show them. So
yeah, I totally agree, Dee. I'm no longer using the company brochures. I feel like they almost oversell the product and set sort of lofty expectations that are hard to meet. And then maybe a new lens has come out and the patient has an old brochure and they say, well, I want this lens. It says it gives me perfect every vision and that's what I want. I'm like, well, that's not really real. There's a better lens out there. And so you kind of get backed into a corner, and it's challenging. I think if you can put it in your own words, in your own customized brochure, that's better. Or like Dee said, if you can have an interaction with a patient or somebody on your team, and we do a lot of that, phone calls from our counselors to reach out to the patient and start that dialogue that really understands what's unique about that patient, and then you can tailor your message there. But I think the more you can personalize it, the better, for sure.
Like Dee and Bill, I feel the brochures oversell. The only brochure that we're just about to integrate into our practice is the RxSight Light Adjustable Lens. I think that one is the only one we actually give, as they need to know about all the extra post-op visits, about locking in their correction. But other than that, I feel with the other brochures, nothing against any of the company who use all their lenses, I think patients look up all the side effects possible for that lens, and then all of a sudden they have all those side effects. So I think less is more sometimes.
yeah.
Right. I've worked with Rendia, and what I've told them for their patient scripts, we don't want to make it sound so good that if the patient can't have a multifocal because they've got an epiretinal membrane, they feel like they got a second-rate product.
Yeah,
so I think ideally education covers the basics, but then leaves the conclusion wide open to the doctor. And if you think this is a great candidate for, let's just say, a multifocality, you can tell them why, but you can quickly backtrack. Well, that exists, but these are the reasons it's not good for you. Well, that's a great panel discussion. I'm going to introduce the next 2 talks, which I'm going to give one on how I explain presbyopia IOL correcting options, and then Mitch will talk about explaining monovision versus the presbyopia correcting options. Here are my pearls for how I explain presbyopia correcting IOLs to patients. I am a consultant for J&J and RxSight. As we all know, it's gotten much more difficult now that we have so many choices, and it's really hard, therefore, to help people navigate this selection process. We've got the pseudo-accommodating lens, now we have the EDOF. We have different powers of bifocals, now a trifocal, plus we can mix them all. We continue to have monofocal monovision with the nuance now of adjustability, and then we also have toric. And often my patients are like this guy over here, having trouble deciding which one they want. So being effective is just really important, because if the patient doesn't understand the value properly, they can't make an informed choice. And yet it's challenging because we have all these different optical terms that are difficult to understand. And, you know, so the patient gets very anxious because now they have to decide not only on the lens, but if they want a monofocal, what distance they want. And if we're not efficient at explaining this, we get very frustrated because of the added chair time and the follow-up phone calls. And this concept of focal distance and depth of focus is particularly challenging. Well, part of the problem is patients want to simplify things and make it binary. And so it helps to use analogies to tell them that things are a continuum. So they question the value of a multifocal. If I tell them they still will need reading glasses, I have to explain, like the weather, there's a benefit to moving to San Diego if you hate the cold, even though you may still occasionally need a sweater. And I try to get away from 2020, 2030, 2040. They don't know what that means. So if they say with their cataract, I seem to be getting along okay, I explain, well, yeah, you have a C+, and that's a passing grade, but you could be an A or an A-. If they have an epiretinal membrane or maculopathy, I need to tell them it won't be perfect. So I say, you're probably not going to get an A, but I'm hoping that you'll have a B or a B+. So in other words, you're warning them it's not perfect, but not making it sound too bad. And then when they say, well, will I be 20/20 with this toric IOL? I'll say, you know, very well, your distance could be an A, but because we can't try different powers, it might be a B+. But B+ still means very good. You wouldn't be wearing glasses most of the time, but it does correctly imply that you could get to an A with some thin glasses occasionally, like driving at night on the freeway. And then there's this question, do I want to see near or far? And that's where using a camera analogy helps, and I talk about 4 zones. This is my version of the Dell questionnaire, and in the back I explain, first of all, that there's 3 different kinds of lenses: single, extended, and multiple focus. Notice they all have the word focus. And then we can add your astigmatism correction to all 3 of these if you need them. We mail this questionnaire to everybody in advance, or ask them to download it and fill it out from the website. But then I talk about the 4 zones. Like a camera has to focus at different zones. But it's not just far, intermediate, and near. I talk about zone 2, which would be the walls on your kitchen, and then arm's length and near. And really, I'm describing the defocus curve, plano -1, -175, and -250. It takes me about 5 minutes to go through this. So I just, using my iPhone, did a little videotape of my spiel, and we play this in the exam room while they're dilating, so they can listen to me tell them about this, because this sets up the foundation for understanding all the different lenses. I explained that when they were young, they had an autofocus camera thanks to their human lens, but everyone loses that by their 60s or 70s, and they need 3 or multiple pairs of glasses to move the focus manually back and forth, so they get trifocals and progressives. It helps to explain what zone 2 is when, say, you're a -6 myope, they want distance vision, and I tell them we want to leave you a little myopic. Well, what does that mean? I tell them zone 2, because then zone 3 will still be a B, and zone 1 will still be a B, and zone 2 will be an A, and that seems to help them understand that. Likewise, if they really want to read without glasses, I tell them that going to zone 3 will still let you see the cell phone and the menu, but you'll also see the computer. And I can explain if they're really myopic, well, gee, you're like a zone 7 with your minus 7, but you know, you have to give that up to get all the other zones. It helps me explain blended vision, which is just zone 1 and 2, as opposed to true monovision, where the two eyes won't work together. It helps me explain EDOF as being 3 out of the 4 zones, and PanOptix being all 4 zones. You still might need reading glasses for either of those, but then what's the advantage? You don't need trifocals or progressives because you still have a continuum for zones 1 through 3. Now, I've created handouts for each of the lenses, and we don't give the patient every handout. We try to narrow it down at the end of the visit to 1, at most 2. And each of them is, I call it an FAQ, but it's really an informed consent. We might talk about the need to do, for instance, a LASIK enhancement. Well, how do I explain for the post-LASIK patient what's going on? I tell them that, you know, cataract surgeons, we only get 1 putt to hit the target, compared to the optometrist with different contacts gets multiple putts. So that's why we can never promise the outcome. But I explain that with their LASIK, it's changed the cornea and introduced multiple different errors into our calculation. It's like putting on an uneven green. So they very well could get a C because of that. The light adjustable lens, though, gives me, it's like having 3 putts. Like with contacts, I can try different ones. For the distant eye and for the near eye, I can experiment. We can move it a little closer or a little further away. I hope this helps. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mitchell Jackson, and today I'm going to be speaking on whether you should implant a lens implant for monovision or a multifocal lens implant. And my relevant financial disclosures are as shown. So it really starts with deciding what patient expectations are. Are they realistic, unrealistic? We use a modified Dell lifestyle questionnaire in our practice, which actually a patient has to self-mark their own personality from easygoing or perfectionist. We had a patient who circled perfectionist so many times it tore the paper. So that kind of tells you whether you're going to be doing any advanced lens at all. But if you look, you know, the questionnaire will cover things. Does the patient want to be able to thread a needle, see a computer, their smartphone, be able to see well golfing or day driving, or are they like a truck driver driving at night? So these are really helpful things in determining which option to go with. We have to update our terminology for patients from mono or micro mini monovision to blended vision is a much more accepted term for patients to understand. They don't like the Cyclops terminology. And multifocality, they have no idea what that means. They think they're wearing bifocals in their eyes. And so we say natural vision to our patients. So what is the best way to pick a patient for a blended vision option? So occupation is important. Those who change viewing distance constantly, like teachers, performing artists, public speakers, sales, flight attendants. Those who need prolonged distance or near vision tasks or need really good stereo acuity, like us surgeons, commercial truck drivers, teamsters, or pilots probably are not the best. Personalities, you know, perseverance is more important than motivation with blended vision, and introverted men don't adapt well. The biggest one is, for me personally, is if you have a patient who's worn monovision or blended vision as a contact lens wearer for years, if you do not give this to them surgically, they'll be extremely unhappy. So blended vision, there are stereo acuity concerns. The average distance corrected stereo is about 71 seconds arc secs. If you go -1 in the near eye, you really don't affect it much, but you don't get as great near vision, maybe some good intermediate vision. If you drop it all the way to -2, you get good J1, J2, but you lose stereo acuity, so you have to find that fine balance of near vision gain and not losing too much stereo acuity. Eye dominance obviously is really important, so most patients who do blended vision prefer their dominant eye for distance, but up to 25% will prefer their dominant eye for near, and so you have to know that. And there's ways to test eye dominance. a lot of fancy ways to do it. What I personally do is I walk in the room, especially now with social distancing. I put up my index finger and I ask them to close one eye before they even know what I'm testing, and they'll close one eye and they'll leave their dominant eye unclosed, and it's pretty easy. I always joke and say, you know, baseball hitters can't switch eye dominance. That's why they become switch hitters. Blended vision, in terms of doing a pre-op contact lens trial, it's not my favorite. If you do, maybe do a -1.5 difference. I would say longer than 2 weeks. If you can get away with 6 weeks, it works. But somebody with a PSC cataract already has near vision often preserved, so it may not be the best way to determine if they're going to succeed. But in my personal experience, the patients who really tolerate true monovision or blended vision with a lens implant are those who are prior monovision contact lens users for years. What are the IOL options? Correct astigmatism with a monofocal toric IOL. Crystalines and TrueLine still has a place for blended vision, has an intermediate benefit. Envista and Envista Toric has shown to have limited but beneficial EDOF effects in my experience. And now, most recently FDA approved, and we're going to be implementing in our practice starting next month, is a light adjustable lens from RF Sight, which allows the surgeon to lock in the refractive outcome up to 2 diopters a sphere and 2 diopters a sphere cylinder adjustability post-operatively with a near guaranteed outcome, which is kind of nice, especially in post-refractive patients. My personal end target is -150 in the near eye when I'm choosing IOL options. Adaptation. I tell patients night vision might be difficult in the beginning. Even if they're used to it, they should still get a pair of glasses for night driving or low light or rain or snow, depending where they live in the US, to keep in the car to help with those difficult situations. And you must also do all the pre-op testing, topography, tomography, epithelial mapping if needed, to make sure you can enhance the patient. If you miss that distance target in the dominant eye with a laser vision correction or SMILE, you must be able to make sure they're enhanceable for post-operative if you miss the target. And so in terms of multifocality, is it really natural vision? Well, John Marshall has already said that it really isn't until we have a true accommodating IOL. But the challenge is to attain that clear vision at all distance and maintaining optical quality, not losing contrast or night vision issues, and not having any loss of binocularity with a short adaptation time. And so the advances in our technology have really gotten well, but there are good options, but not perfect options. But the patient needs to be a perfect, not good candidate with any of these options to have a successful outcome. And so what is the quote unquote perfect candidate for a multifocal or natural vision IOL? Those with pristine ocular surface, you know, FACO and Duke study have shown most patients are asymptomatic and have true objective signs of ocular surface disease. So make sure you treat it ahead of time. Make sure they have no macular pathology. Plan to correct corneal astigmatism. Realistic expectations, really important, as we've discussed, and do all your imaging to make sure they are enhanceable post-op if you miss target. No less concerns is corneal quality and angle alpha, angle kappa. I look at those as well. Devices such as the OPD3 can give you all this data, and there are other devices too. We just use that in our clinic, and it really gives you a good assessment of what the patients are candidates, perfect candidates or not. The important thing is you need to use modern day IOL formulas such as the Barrett True K, the Hill RBF, Ascaris calculator, and use devices like IOL Master, the Movu, or intraoperative aberrometry and LensStar to really good aberrometry, good IOL calculation measurements. We did a study which was published, my prior fellow, Dr. Anna Edmondson, and myself, showing the best end target for any of these lenses. Specifically here is the Symphony and Symphony Toric IOL. We had a large subset of patients where we found with polynomial regression, you need to know what end target use for which lens. For the Symphony, we discovered in this study that -0.07 dominant or first click minus for the dominant eye, -0.21 or close to -0.25 for the non-dominant eye gave the best objective visual acuity across all ranges without any subjective issues. So it was a great study, and it really helps because if you go 2- in the near eye, you might get spider halos with this lens, as we know. Trifocals, the PanOptix approved in the last year, is a non-optimized diffractive trifocal. It gives a great range of vision all the way from 40 centimeters out to distance. And so you really don't lose intermediate or near. There are certain patients that are better candidates than others, but the same preoperative testing needs to be done as discussed earlier to make sure the patient's a perfect candidate. Most of my patients are achieving J1 uncorrected near vision, and they are when we shoot for plano both eyes or first click minus in the non-dominant eye and plano in the dominant eye. Near future options, non-diffractive multifocal quote-unquote IOL technologies like Vivity from Alcon with its X-Wave technology, and the Eye Enhance from Johnson & Johnson, which is really a monofocal with EDOF effects. These will be great options for patients who you can focus on giving them distance and intermediate uncorrected visual results, especially if they've had prior RK, post-LASIK PRK, epiretinal membranes, or other corneal or ocular morbidities, desiring additional freedom from glasses, where some of the trifocals and EDOFs prior to this technology might have created some more aberrations postoperatively, especially with nighttime vision. So contrast sensitivity, distance vision, glare, and night vision quality with these newer technologies, which are soon to be FDA approved in the United States, are comparable to monofocal IOL characteristics and will add another armamentarium in the natural vision premium IOL option for our patients. In summary, not talking about monovision or multifocality, we really want to talk about blended or natural vision with our patients. Blended vision patients, you want to know the eye dominance. Prior contact lens monovision users have a longer duration, seem to adapt the best, an end target of -150 in the near eye, and have a plan for low light night vision adaptation. Natural vision or multifocal patients, it's important to determine the perfect candidate for some of these relatively imperfect options we have. Preoperative due diligence is critical. Make sure we can enhance the patient, know your end target for the lens you're using, and reinforce realistic expectations. Using a questionnaire preoperatively really will get you out of trouble in the long run. Thanks for having me.
Well, we have a great panel with Dr. Cummings, Tipperman, Stevenson, and Slade. Those were two amazing talks, both very different. And I find explaining all those choices, I'm going to ask our panel members, what do you find hardest, or what are your biggest pearl about explaining the different presbyopia option IOLs versus monovision versus just single vision focus to your patients? Arthur, unmute, and if you could let us know what you think.
Thank you, Rosa. Yeah, what I do is explain to patients that whatever they choose, if they're choosing an IOL, involves a compromise. And the very first one would be, I can give you the best vision possible for distance with no problems at night, but the problem is you can't read. And the moment we do something like blended vision, we're going to make the two eyes different that you might be aware of. It might increase a bit of glare at night, right, but it can be increased or it can be improved with a pair of spectacles. And then with multifocals, you have lenses that are going to be balanced, but there's a ring in the lens that gives you these different focal lengths. So they all come with a compromise. And a particular term I've used that really sends us home is I'd say to patients when we start talking about blended vision, I'd say, well, you know what? If you had 3 eyes, I'd have the solution for you. You can go and check in and book it now. We'll have 1 eye for distance, 1 eye for the screen, and 1 eye for your phone. And you can see a light bulb moment and patients say, right, I get this. So patient education, as we've heard today, is so crucial.
And Dee, what is your pearl for patient education with respect to explaining all the different technologies or options available?
Well, I like to, I loved Arthur's comment. I always tell patients their eyes are sisters, they're not twins. So different anatomies sometimes can be with eyes, but I'm not a big blended vision person. I mean, I don't do a monofocal in one eye and set them too far apart, because a lot of my patients have a problem that when they get older, they can't summate that. So they have trouble and they have to wear glasses all the time. So what I do with the premium, either accommodative, usually accommodative lenses, I set the non-dominant eye for -0.5 to -3/4 of a diopter, and I set the other one for plano. And I usually can reach the target with realistic expectations. And again, I sometimes say in dimly lit room, you may have to wear a very, very weak pair of readers. And with multifocality, I think that the option with the PanOptix is a really good one, but they do have to be aware that they are going to may have some halos and glare, and they may get used to those, but it will give them a really nice option if they don't have any macular or corneal pathology. So, you know, it's not simple, but it's you just have to remind them that, you know, we are taking something that was God-given, now we're putting something plastic or acrylic in the eye, and it's never going to be perfect, but it can be sure better than you are.
And I think that's really important. I always tell my patients there will be visual compromise no matter what you put in at certain distances. So although you're trying to get all those zones that David and Mitch talked about, you may be compromising certain zones with wanting seamless vision. It's never going to be totally perfect. Rich, do you have any other pearls around this, or how do you deal with the patient that says, I don't want to wear glasses anymore?
Well, we'll just take a step back. I find the camera analogy, like David talked about, is very helpful for patients. So for, now I've become an older person. So for older people like myself, I compare a Brownian Instamatic fixed focus camera to an autofocus camera. And for younger patients, I talk about the disposable throwaway cameras you sometimes see at weddings. You can focus just at one distance or have variable focus. And like Arthur talked about, and I find engineers understand technology trade-offs. So everything has a plus and a minus for patients. But I think if you frame it like that, then they begin to understand there's a compromise with everything, and we're going to pick a choice that's going to work best for me.
And Steve, I mean, you've been doing refractive surgery for a while, and Steve did my eyes. What a wonderful job. And I have a little bit of monovision now. So can you tell me what's the difference between the pure refractive patient, how you explain things to them, versus now the refractive cataract patient? Is there a difference, or are you basically framing everything the same way?
Yeah, the refractive cataract patients are a little older and they have gray hair, but pretty much everything we say to them is really the same. It's the same set of options, but you do have to go into the fact that they can no longer accommodate, and accommodation covers up so many woes. The thing that I would mention is that what we do is we of course want them to know every option, but we also will tell them what we think would be the best thing for them. And often they will agree with that. And then that's what the discussion is about, rather than trying to go through all these different options. It's just easier. It's easier for them. And I'm glad you have the monovision, Rosa.
Yes, thank you. It is quite useful. But my other point is that I also try to explain everything, but also price points, because sometimes you might get into a heated discussion or a long discussion about stuff and they just can't afford that newer technology. So you might just want to see where they land in that price point to what options we can give them. Now, there were 2 audience response questions, and how often do you employ mini monovision with monofocal IOLs? And it's quite interesting that much more frequently than multifocal IOLs. So I'm just wondering, does everyone do mini monovision, or are we looking at more hitting our emmetropic target? Arthur?
I use monovision a lot and mini monovision, Rosa, but I also use a device called Viveo that measures patient behavior objectively over 36 hours. And then it ranks all the options for me, and we can discuss these options objectively. And I find that is by far the most useful. It really gives patients understanding of exactly what's going on. They understand if 2 look pretty similar, then they'll start looking at what the price differential is, and they can make a decision. But it's such a wide field that having this sort of objective data really helps.
Okay, well, we have to wrap up now because we have our next 2 talks, streaming Dee Stevenson on explaining flax and other astigmatism options, and informed consent and setting appropriate expectations by Arthur Cummings. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dee Stevenson, and I'd like to thank David Chang and Kendall Donaldson for allowing me to be part of this 20 Happy in 2020. These are my financial disclosures, and the ones that are highlighted I will be speaking of in this talk. My practice is very unique. It's a boutique solo practice with state-of-the-art technology. So of course, I will be using technology-driven explanations in order to utilize examples of the patient's diagnostic tests for them to understand astigmatism and how flax will be beneficial to them. I call this touch points. These are 4 pre-surgical opportunities to discuss eye surgery with the patients: before the exam, during the exam, after exam, and of course, after diagnostic testing. And it's all about teamwork,
You know, we want the best outcome for the patient. So the office staff, the technicians, the surgical counselor, myself, and the patient all need to be on the same page so that their surgical experience is wonderful, and so that they feel that they are special to us and that their eyes are special, that we just don't treat them willy-nilly, that we have a plan. So it's very important that they understand how important things are. The goals and the expectations are real. We need to make sure that they understand what we're talking about and that we're all on the same page. We want them to understand some of the technology so that they can make educated decisions, and we encourage them to look at our website. We also are always available by telephone or in person for further questions. So explanation of astigmatism is my job, and I do it fairly simply. One, I tell them about the shape of the eye. I tell them that it's shaped like a football, not a basketball, and that 2 points of light need to focus on the retina in the same plane in order to have an image that is clear. And I say, well, you know, the best way to look at that is let's look at your glasses. And I said, there's 3 numbers on here that are really important. That's the sphere, the cylinder, which tells us about their astigmatism, and then their bifocal ad that tells them what they need to wear to see to read. And I tell them it's very simple. What we want to do is we want to make that refraction as near to 0 as possible to make them independent of glasses. And we need to correct their astigmatism, their sphere, and help them with presbyopia. So where I found things to be really helpful in my office is some of these pre-op testing is just great because they may not remember my words, but they are visual like I am, and they can remember the E, and they can remember that the E was blurry and why the E was blurry. So the eye trace has been invaluable in my office. So this is the big E, and it's blurry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show them this. I'll show them and I'll say, okay, so this is an eye that has a good E. The cornea is nice and clear and pristine, and the E is nice and clear. And then if you look at the E over the internal part of their eye, which is the lens, it's blurry. So the summation of those two, the E is blurry at the end, and that's what their refraction is. And that's why they're not seeing well, because they have a cataract, but it doesn't have anything to do with their lens. And the lens can be causing them some astigmatism as well. So the next thing I show is let's go back to the cornea, and I say, let's look at this cornea again. And this is a cornea that's blurry. The E's blurry. We look at the lens, the E's blurry, and we look at the summation. So they really don't see well. And the refraction's not good because it's in yellow on this machine. And I tell them that. I say, we can't see through all of this because of the abnormalities. So we want to know what the potential of the patient is to see well. So if we click this button, it allows us to put correction on there so that we can tell the patient what it would look like if they had their astigmatism corrected. So here is what their potential vision would be, showing astigmatism correction either by toric IOLs or femto-LRIs, which are cuts on the cornea. And what you can do is you can actually toggle back and forward, and you can say this is without correction of astigmatism, this is with correction of astigmatism. So what E would you like to see? So the hardest job is my surgical counselor. Now, Beverly's been with me for 31 years, and she was an optician and knows optics really well. So this is a no-brainer for her to talk to patients about cataract surgery. She reassures patients, no matter what they choose and what technology they choose, that it'll be the right decision for them. And we all feel the same way. We want this experience to be good. She reviews every aspect of the options available for the technology and the IOL, as well as the pricing. And she always considers each individual patient based on their pathology. Remember, dry eye and epiretinal membranes, if they have it before and they know they have it, then you didn't cause it when it happens when all this is said and done. So she makes sure that they know their pathology, just like I tell them and just like the technician tells them. She utilizes videos and diagnostic testing and shows them pictures again and things from the different companies of the different kinds of instrumentation I use. She's understanding and she shows them kindness, and she never rushes and always answers all their questions. And she will always be available if they need to call her. So what she does is, when she explains all this stuff too, she has a basic technology that about cataract surgery that she explains, and she builds on the basics with specifics. She talks about Aura with manual cataract surgery and Aura with the other packages, and she tells them and shows them a video about Aura and shows them that it's the real-time reading, and it's the last reading that I do to make sure I pick the right lens, the right power of the lens, or align the lens to the best outcome for the patient. She talks about the customization of flax that I can use customize density for their cataract and customize it just for that patient's individual eyes. I always tell the patient that their eyes are sisters, but they're not twins, so each eye is different. And she also tells about the FLACS benefits, which include the precision, the less energy used, the faster recovery, and the ability to correct mild astigmatism using astigmatic incisions on the cornea. She also talks about my platform, which is LENSAR, and this allows me to align a toric IOL, either being premium or multifocal or just a toric lens using IntelliAxis, which are precise marks made on the steep axis and put on the capsule and put on the cornea, so I can align the lens very easily. And she always only says there's only one negative thing, and that's the cost out of pocket. So in summary, teamwork, know your technology in your hands, always work to give the patient the best outcomes, be a team, and no patient pathology, whether it be ocular or psychologic, no limitations to the IOL choices, and not reaching the goals that were realistic. Please remember, be kind. And thank you, ladies, for making my life at work a whole lot easier. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Arthur Cummings. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank David Chang and Kendall Donaldson for their very kind invitation to participate in the 20 Happy series. My topic today is informed consent and setting appropriate expectations. These are my financial disclosures, although none of these are really relevant today. Informed consent for surgery has become a critical component of surgical practice. It includes specific legal requirements. The hospital consent for surgery form with the patient's signature is a small part of the process. Today, consent requires modern standards and needs to discuss specific challenges. Informed consent is a key element in the trust patients have in surgeons, and it is of increasing importance and must keep up to date with patient and legal expectations. The surgeon's checklist must at least document the date, who is involved, material risks, unique risks, special circumstances of the patient, risks of not undergoing intervention, consent given or refused, and findings of incapacity, and identify of substitute decision makers if required. In Ireland, there are additional requirements. What are the alternatives, and how do the alternative options compare in terms of risks and benefits to the procedure being advised? Informed consent means that the surgeon must provide the patient with the information. Material risks include risks common to all surgery, such as infection, and then specific risks, such as missing target. Risks that can cause the patient to refuse surgery are especially important. This includes items like religious beliefs. And surgeons must use their clinical judgment in the discussion when there are so many questions and so many things to entertain. Supporting documents are not a substitute for oral communication, and surgery without consent can be done only in emergency situations. Additional educational and supporting documents such as videos, animations, brochures, information leaflets, website links, counselors are all very helpful, but they are not the consent. The consent is the conversation that the surgeon has with the patient. Challenges specifically around surgery are anxiety and fear. Surgery is frightening, and then when your patient hears you speaking about all the things that can potentially go wrong, that's a recipe for creating even more anxiety. So it's our job to minimize patient's fear and avoid inducing anxiety. A surgeon's calm, reassuring demeanor helps, and family members can be helpful for those who really aren't listening. Questions will be aplenty, and we should do the best we can to try and answer these questions in a reasonable way. Most of these questions are straightforward and are a result of so much information being available online. So patients read these things and have all the questions. So we need to be patient, and often just answering one or two of these questions in a reassuring, calm manner sets the platform right for proper informed consent. Proper documentation is the only objective measurement. I don't recall this patient specifically, but my usual practice does not suffice. And consent for surgical procedures requires recorded documentation. The minimum and recommended documentation is date of dialogue, who is involved, material and unique risks, special circumstances of the patient, risk of not having the surgery, and consent obtained or refused. And then documentation after the fact is of questionable value. You can't do a procedure and then go and adjust your consent. So the following is an example of proper documentation of an informed consent discussion. It's long, and it's important to note that with modern EMRs, this is all electronic, so we can have multiple documents ready for use that we simply edit and cut and paste. The patient was advised that there are 2 IOL options that suit her requirements to address her cataracts and to provide her with the most spectral independence possible. The first is blended vision, with one eye for distance vision and the other for near vision. This option is less expensive as the IOLs being used are monofocal. The advantages are that any dysphotopsia can be managed with spectacles, and the disadvantages are reduced stereopsis and a limited range of focus. The alternative option is that of a presbyopia correcting IOL, in her case a trifocal, that provides stereopsis and a fuller range of vision. The disadvantages are that the additional costs of the IOLs and the potential for dysphotopsia that cannot be corrected by spectacles. Given her lifestyle and the fact that she does not drive much at night, we agreed that the trifocal IOL option suits her best. The generic risk of cataract surgery was discussed, including infection, missing the refractive target, residual or induced astigmatism, potentially needing corneal refractive surgery or an IOL exchange or supplementary IOL afterwards, CME, retinal detachment, PCO, and other potential risks included in more detail in the signed consent form. We discussed the requirements for time off from work for the 2 surgeries 1 week apart and the subsequent challenges with anisometropia for the week between surgeries. We also discussed the fact that the refractive outcome is typically stable at 6 weeks post-operative and that it would be evaluated in more detail at this visit. The patient was happy with the consent process and is aware of her options, as well as the option of not proceeding with any surgery now. She agrees that she was given the opportunity to ask all the questions that she had pertaining to her surgery and is now happy to proceed with said surgery. So this is not the consent, it's just documenting the conversation that you had about the consent process. It's a lot of work. So in summary, the dialogue and documentation of informed consent for surgery have evolved from a brief chat and a quick signature into a major and sometimes complex component of surgical practice. In my personal practice now, this is the component that takes more time than any other part. We can anticipate more changes in the future in response to patient expectations regarding communication and information, and it is important to keep up to date with and fulfill the medical legal requirements in the policies of the local regulatory authorities. I hope you got something from this. It's not the most interesting topic, but thank you for your attention.
All right, well, thank you for those 2 excellent talks from those speakers. Well, panel, let's talk about astigmatism. You know, it's an easy discussion when the patient's already wearing toric soft contact lenses or they have a ton in their glasses. So I'm going to give you the patient that I often see. They're not really wearing glasses in the distance. They walk around with just readers, but they have a diopter, a quarter of astigmatism. And you try to explain it and they go, gee, no one ever told me I had astigmatism before. So what are your pearls for explaining that? Rosa, ladies first.
Well, I think this is in fact the most important patient to discuss astigmatism with, because if you don't and you take out their lens, their natural lens, and create an astigmatism that they need glasses for all distances, they're going to be pretty upset. So what I tell them is that their eye is shaped more like an egg than a ball, and that distorts their vision, and that if we remove their natural lens, which is currently countering that, we need to put in a lens to counter it as well, or else they will need glasses for all distances. And generally, I'd say 99% of patients understand that, and then we take the conversation from there, because I personally think correcting astigmatism to me is the easiest thing. It's a no-brainer. I wouldn't not put an astigmatism correction in a glasses prescription, so why would I not offer it to my patient during surgery?
Others in the panel, pearls for our audience on explaining astigmatism?
Yes, so one thing I do is with either the iTrace or OPD3 device, I can actually show, I like pictures more than words. It's easier with these patients because even some surgeons don't really know how to deal with astigmatism, never mind a patient. So I try and show them if we're going to take out the lens and there's some lenticular astigmatism, like this is what's going to be left. If we don't correct it, I show how it's crossing it out and demonstrate to the patient why it's important to correct so they kind of understand a little better. But I usually try to talk about lifestyle options more than the word astigmatism. And I say, you know, us as surgeons will get you to the endpoint we want, whether it's, you know, getting to read all levels of vision or their distance vision. And we internally decide whether it's going to be a toric or a femto LRI. And like Dee eloquently said, we use the LENSAR system. And so for toric alignment, it's really, really helpful to nail the target.
Steve?
Yeah, you know, I'm a big believer as far as astigmatism, monovision, everything. Let them try it before they buy it. So the patient that comes in with astigmatism, we're going to correct just the astigmatism. We're going to show them the difference. Now, I have a financial interest in RX site LALs, but to me, this is the best way to deal with astigmatism, and that's post-operative, where you've already got the factors of the incision, you've got any sort of shifting, the patients can see how much you're correcting. And if you look at FDA trial data, it seems to be the best way we have to correct astigmatism.
Bill, I'm going to change the question a little bit. You're seeing a patient who says, Dr. Wiley, I don't mind glasses, but you look and they've got 2 diopters, 2¼ diopters of cylinder. How do you explain the value, or do you even bother, of a toric?
Yeah, good point. And I'll often ask that patient, I say, you know, let's say Mrs. Jones, you ever notice when your glasses are tilted a little bit and things don't seem quite right? It's you have everything lined up perfectly. Or have you ever had that challenge, you know, you get a new pair of glasses, they weren't right, and they remake them again. A lot of those patients that have had large amounts of astigmatism understand that that their eyes are unique, and they either have challenges in getting their prescription filled properly, or challenges with the fit. If they're not on perfect, they don't see quite well. I said, we can get rid of all that or minimize that with an astigmatism correction by treating it inside the eye, so you don't have to worry about that perfect alignment or that challenging glasses fit afterwards. And they tend to understand that because they realize their eyes are unique and they've had issues in the past.
That's good. I'm surprised no one mentioned the topography, so I will. I put a normal topography on the wall of every exam room, and then we bring up on the screen their topography, and I explained that the eye really has 2 lenses, the cornea and either the natural or artificial lens. They have to work together, and your cornea, because it has this yellow area, misfocuses, and we have an opportunity to correct that imperfection at the same time. Do other people do that? And then a related question, how do you explain irregular astigmatism? Rosa?
Can you explain it to me? No, I'm kidding. Well, you know what? I do. The topography, I started smiling on the 2 points of what Bill said about the glasses, if they're crooked and your vision isn't aligned. And also the topography is a great way to show people what they see, or how we're going to correct that visual. And I wish I had the iTrace to be able to show them that too. I don't have the iTrace technology here yet, but I think it's a neat way to be able to show people. Regular astigmatism is tougher because I think it's harder to correct, and so expectations need to be definitely defined when you're talking about irregular astigmatism, and depending on the type of irregular astigmatism you're dealing with. The other thing is with astigmatism, a key point, I know it's been brought up in other modules, is looking for a corneal abnormality like dry eye or epithelial basement membrane disease. Specifically, if you find the astigmatism is irregular or fluctuating, that you may need to pre-treat them for a while or repeat testing. But with irregular astigmatism, it's a pure corneal, like keratoconus or something like that, I tend to steer a little bit away from correcting the astigmatism, depending on the amount and the stability.
Hey, Dave, the silent killer, in my opinion, is EBMD. There's so many people
Yes.
that we discover by just doing topography, like, what's going on here? You look at their slit lamp a little closer and you see they have EBMD. So don't, for everybody out there, make sure you don't miss that, because if you're doing a premium IOL, that will be the silent killer in the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, again, the image of the topography is so valuable. I say, look at all the different colors you have. I couldn't even prescribe glasses that could focus each part of your cornea, correctly.
Exactly.
Panel, any pearls for explaining astigmatic keratotomy? Little tips that you find are really effective. Does anyone do astigmatic keratotomy?
Yeah, I do astigmatic keratotomy for patients less than a diopter or so of astigmatism. In general, as toric lenses have gotten better and we have them in presbyopic solutions, I feel like I'm doing less and less astigmatic keratotomies, but I do explain it. It's easy for me. I had radial keratotomy, way back in the day, and so I can explain, some of the ways that we can use an incision to reshape the cornea to help, treat astigmatism. So I do explain that. I also explain that patients that have astigmatism, I say, I'm going to go into the room with a number of different lenses. I use a device called intraoperative aberrometry that's going to help pick the type of correction we're going to do. And I make a small incision, or I may place a toric lens. One way or the other, we're going to treat that or manage that astigmatism for you. So I sort of leave it open-ended. A lot of times I don't know even myself how I'm going to address your astigmatism until I'm in the operating room.
Steve, Arthur gave a great overview of informed consent. Are there certain things that everybody should go through with respect to, let's just take a multifocal lens. What do you think are essentials for surgeons to include in their informed consent?
Yeah, well, Arthur really covered it well, and we have a pretty exhaustive informed consent that we've developed over years and years. Two things. One is that I think it's a good idea to talk to patients about that you may exchange their premium IOL. I mean, get that in their head. It shouldn't be the barrier that, in the past we have talked about. And, it should be more of a, well, we're going to do this if it doesn't work out. We're happier to do that. The second thing is that it's going to be okay. You are likely going to have to wear glasses, and you might have some glare and halos afterwards. Do you have them now? The best thing, though, is I tell the patients, you may have glare and halos, but that is the lens working, and that shows you that the lens is working. Not everybody can see these glare and halos, but you might be able to do it. I love
I tell everybody they still have to wear cheaters part-time. Expect that, even if we put the most advanced lens in. I tell every single patient that in low light conditions or very small print, or if they're just tired at the end of the day, they're still going to have to wear a low power cheaters. So I set that expectation right away, so they don't think that they're going to be free 100% of the time.
Right. What about explaining the possibility they might not get the IOL that you've collectively decided on? I asked that question of the audience, and a lot of people really don't bring that up. Rosa, is that important to define up front, or does it happen so infrequently you address it when you need to?
I address it always up front that we may not be able to implant the lens, and I'll make the decision in the operating room as to whether it's still a great choice for them. Just to make sure they understand that I'm still making the ultimate choice for them as what I think suits their eye the best. And I think it's really important. In my talk that's coming up, we'll talk about turning a complication into an expectation. So I kind of even on halo and glare, I consent 100% of any multifocal and EDF IOL patient to 100% halo and glare in the immediate post-op period, and that it will get better over time. And I think that's really important, and we'll talk about it, I think, in the next panel discussion, because I think time is up now, David, so we got to get going.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, panel. We have two excellent talks coming up now. Rich Tipperman on discussing costs and value, and then Rosa on effective post-op counseling, particularly when the patient's unhappy.
Hello, I'm going to be speaking with you about how to discuss costs and explaining the value proposition for patients who are considering advanced technology lenses at the time of cataract surgery. Here's my financial disclaimers. When you educate patients for cataract surgery, there's really only one primary goal, and that's to take the best possible care of your patients that you can. This includes explaining to them all their options and choices, especially when there's new techniques or technologies. Nowadays, patients have many forks in the road to decide and many different choices, and so it's important for the surgeon to be able to describe these to patients. The nice thing about this is you're not selling the patient, you're just educating them. When you educate a patient just on cost alone, you end up with this type of discussion. The doctor saying a presbyopia correcting lens costs $2,000, and the patient saying, I could buy a lot of reading glasses for that price. Cost really isn't helpful. What's much more important is to educate people based on value. Whenever anyone decides to purchase something, the decision really has less to do with the cost associated with the purchase and more to do with the value they perceive that purchase will bring to their quality of life. And that can be influenced by many factors, and the question is, how do you define value for your patients and talk to them about that at the time of cataract surgery? What is the value in cataract surgery in the context of cataract surgery? It's really something that solves a problem for a patient or improves their situation or overall quality of life and delivers a specific set of benefits that's understandable to them. When we look at this, it becomes clear why this method works. Toric IOLs are much easier to explain to patients because patients with high levels of astigmatism understand the value of correcting their astigmatism. They've done it their whole life. And because of that value, they're much more amenable to going ahead with an advanced technology lens to correct astigmatism at the time of cataract surgery. The challenge in educating people about presbyopia and presbyopia correction at the time of cataract surgery is patients don't really understand presbyopia, and they certainly don't understand the absolute presbyopia that comes at the time of cataract surgery if you place a monofocal lens and give them good distance vision. The more you can focus on the value and benefits advanced technology lenses will bring to your patient's lifestyle, the less important the cost becomes. We've all had the issue or experience of dealing with a patient who comes in and says, I have a friend who has one of those lenses, they're so happy, that's what I want. The patients don't come in and say, my friend has a presbyopia correcting lens and never wears glasses again. They note the patient's improved quality of life and overall improved visual function and happiness, and that's really what they want. So when you educate your patients based on value, especially for presbyopia correcting lenses, you want to focus on the long-term benefits. This technology will maximize the function of your sight, and we all know this is the most precious sense for the rest of your life. If you're going to buy a camera, would you rather have a camera that had a fixed focus or a camera that had a variable focus? And your discussion should really be about enhanced visual function and enhanced quality of life, not never wearing glasses again. Things that can enhance your quality of life and overall function really are priceless. I feel very strongly that using the term premium IOL is the wrong way to educate patients. Premium implies a luxury purchase, and luxury purchases are nice, but they may not be necessary. If you look at the very expensive watch to your right, that can cost over $10,000, but in reality doesn't really tell time any better than a $2 watch. Advanced technology, however, are desirable because they deliver specific benefits. So if you think of cameras, as you buy a better and better, higher quality camera, you get more features, better focus, and more flexibility. And this is the way to think about lenses. So advanced technologies imply something that's better. Premium technologies may imply something that's more costly, but may or may not actually function better. So the question then is, how do you describe things to your patients? If you call monofocal cataract surgery standard, single vision, routine, normal, conventional, or what most people choose, whether you realize it or not, you're inherently biasing them that this is a better choice. Now, it may be for some patients, but it may not be for others. And when faced with a difficult decision, people will tend to default to the choice they feel the majority of other people will choose. It's why patients often ask you, well, what do most people choose? So calling it routine, standard, or conventional ends up making patients think this is really a better choice, which it may or may not be. A better way to describe monofocal contact lens may be basic cataract surgery. Eric Donenfeld has suggested using government-issued lens, but I prefer the term basic cataract surgery. It's easily understood by patients. It sets a good frame or reference for what they get, And if they don't want basic cataract surgery, they have an option that's better. It also confers no frills and you get what you pay for. The nice thing about using this approach is once you set the bar for basic cataract surgery, you don't have this high hurdle of never wearing glasses again. You have a much more approachable goal of giving the patient more than they would get with basic monofocal cataract surgery. With a presbyopia correcting lens, they'll get an enhanced range of vision, improved quality of life, and more visual function. You're not promising that they'll never wear glasses again, but you are letting them know that they'll do better than they would with a single focus lens set for distance. This is a menu that allows for technology or an approach called price anchoring, which some practices have found helpful. You can place the cost of advanced technology lenses on a list with a lot of other technologies that patients will use during their day-to-day lives. And when patients look at this list, they begin to realize that for the value they get and the cost proposition and value proposition is there where they get significant benefit. I know one surgeon who likes to tell patients when they ask how much a presbyopia correcting lens costs, and he says, well, it costs about a year of cable TV, but then after the year, your cable's free for the rest of your life. And I think this is another way to help patients become more comfortable with the value and begin the discussion of cost. So when you complete a consult, the patient should understand the value that they get with an advanced technology lens, and more importantly, the frame of reference of what they would achieve in terms of their vision if they go with a basic IOL. And with appropriate education, which option is better for the patient and which creates more value for them will be clear without selling and just educating the patient. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Dr. Rosa Bragamieli, and today I'm going to speak to you on effective post-op counseling and satisfying the dissatisfied patient. I really have no financial disclosures pertinent to this talk. The most important point that I'd like to make at this point in time is that we really need to take the time to listen to the patient both preoperatively and postoperatively. It is important to communicate the post-op course by having effective pre-op counseling to minimize any post-op dissatisfaction. So I firmly believe that more chair time pre-op lessens chair time post-op, and under-promising and over-delivering is a really important quote that I learned from Dr. Steve Lane many years ago. You need to set realistic expectations for your patients as well, and this has all been reviewed excellently in an earlier talk today. I do think it's important to review the patient's ocular anatomy and personality and any potential limitations with refractive outcomes or IOL choices. They just may not be suited for this, and nothing will make them happy because you just can't achieve it. But you should review all IOL options that are suited for lifestyle choices with appropriate patients and ensure that the patient fully understands the potential positive implications and negative implications. This way you turn a potential complication into an expectation, and then patients come to realize this is something you had discussed with them previously and are more willing to accept it post-operatively and less likely to be unhappy. So you need to review realistic outcomes with the patient. They may still need glasses. They may have some compromise of their vision at different distances to get a range of vision. There may be a neuroadaptation process, so it may take them up to 6 months, and you need to let them know that before everything gets to where they need it to be. Usually it occurs within 3, but it could be as long as 6 months. Refractive outcomes need to be discussed with the patient, specifically dysphotopsias as well, and let the patient know that they may have some halo and glare. And the post-op healing course. Some of the drops we have the patients on may increase a dry eye. The procedure itself can increase dry eye, and so letting the patients know that beforehand will help them accept it afterwards. So some pearls for communicating with an unhappy patient. What's really important is to take the journey with the patient themselves. Let them know you're going to hold their hand through the process. Listen to the patient and make them feel heard. If we minimize or push them to the side, they're going to get angrier and more unhappy. So I like to try to make them feel like I'm going to work through this with them, try to figure out together what's bothering them most, and say that we both need to be patient and time is needed both for them and me for them to get better. It's also really important at this time to look for an anatomical reason behind the symptoms and let the patient know you're doing this. Residual refractive error may take some time for the lens to sit into place. Talk to the patient about it. Corneal issues such as dry eye, let them know it may take a week before it gets better. Put them on some teardrops. Look for CME, do a macular OCT, review the results with the patient present. This way they feel like you're really taking a part in their care and listening to them. Look for IOL centration and alignment or any capsular issues such as PCO, but once you do a YAG capsulotomy, let the patient understand that you may not be able to do an IOL exchange, and so talk to the patient about that. The more we talk and discuss with them, the happier they tend to get because they do think we are listening to them. Talk about neuroadaptation, binocularity, and time required to optimize vision and minimize any dysphotopsias. It's important for their understanding to be that it could take 3 to 6 months before they get better and that these things get better. It's also important to hold these patients very close to you. These are the patients that you don't want going to see other doctors. See them more frequently, make them know you're listening to them. Time does tend to heal all wounds, except for difficult personality types, and sometimes you miss them preoperatively, and some patients may never neuroadapt, or some patients will never be satisfied. Again, what I try to do is identify the main issue, whether it's quality of vision or dysphotopsia, and I use certain tricks to improve satisfaction or set more realistic expectations, such as I will put -3 trial lenses in front of the patient's eyes to let them see what it would be like to remove the multifocal effect or the trifocal effect and have them lose their intermediate near vision, and ask them now if the dysphotopsias may be more tolerable and have them go out and see what life would be like that way. Most are happy with that and want to keep their range of vision, but very infrequently some are not happy still, and you may need to do a lens exchange. But let them know that some of the symptoms may not get better, and patients need to know that we are working through a process together. Again, hold their hands, keep them close, and talk to them about it all. And generally, I'd say 90 to 95% of patients will become a happy patient. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. So it's kind of weird watching yourself talk on video, but great talks today. All of the talks have been spectacular, so I'm really quite impressed. I've learned a ton today. So David, how do you explain the value proposition to your patients in the face of explaining what issues could happen also, in addition to the value proposition?
Yeah, big topic. I think it's been said earlier, I think really looking at the patient's glasses and how often they wear it is really important. So if the patient has glasses, but they don't wear them very much, that's easy. You can tell them whenever you don't have your glasses on, correcting the astigmatism, whatever, you will see more. If they're wearing progressives or trifocals, you say the reason you need this is because the alternative is 3 or 4 pairs of glasses. So with this EDOF or trifocal, you won't need progressives or trifocals. You'll just need some store-bought readers. So I think probably my pearl would be to put it in the context of what they're wearing. They already understand why they need it. And then, of course, this is really important when they're myopic, and you tell them, well, you are really good at zone 4, but if we want to get the other zones, we have to give that up.
So are there any pearls on how you consent the low myope, the -2, -3 patient? Because sometimes I find they're the most difficult to consent for these choices.
Yeah, you're right. They are very difficult. So they need to know that part of their compromise is, we take the equivalent to the person with perfect distance vision. You'd say, imagine your distance vision was perfect and all you wanted to do now was improve your near. Well, we're going to improve your near significantly, but at a cost to distance. And then we'll show them in the phoropter what monovision looks like, or blended vision. When they see that cost, they get some sort of an idea of what any procedure is going to do to their near vision. If you're a perfect -2 and your near vision is absolutely spot on, either with light splitting technology or with blended vision, you're going to lose something. but I think it's very important that you make them realize what they're going to lose. We always tell them, for any advantage you're going to get, there's going to be some small cost, and you've got to weigh them up. And it's our job, yours and mine, to figure out what your best compromise is.
And Rich, I think you have a bit of an antidote on how you or how people should be able to see the cost or the value of the technology or our services.
Right, thanks for letting me share that. It's actually a story I first heard Ken Rosenthal relate, because sometimes patients will say, well, why is it so expensive, or why does it cost that amount? And he tells the story of a woman who asked Pablo Picasso to do a pencil sketch, and Picasso ripped off a sheet of paper with a pencil, quickly sketched her and handed it to her. And she said, well, what will that cost? And he said, $5,000. And she said, but Master Picasso, it took you less than 5 minutes. And he said, no, but it took me my entire life. And I think sometimes we undervalue the services we do provide to patients. And when we use these technologies, it's your expertise, it's your education, it's your experience, and there's a tremendous amount of thought and skill that goes into making it work well, as you see over this entire series of Mastering 2020. So that's important to remember when you are discussing cost. And so,
Steve, who discusses the costs with the patients? Yourself, or do you have a counselor? We had an audience response question on this.
Great question. I should be doing it. I just really don't like doing it, but I'm trying to do it more and more of what lens, but I don't discuss actual numbers. So we have a counselor do that, but I should be more versed in that. I think they want to hear it from their surgeon.
And David, how about yourself?
Yeah, I do it myself. I find it invaluable for a couple reasons, because it is part of the value discussion. And and in addition, if the patient really says, look, I just can't afford that, you know, then I immediately not only backtrack, but I backpedal, but I say, you know, that's fine. This is really a convenience. And, you know, I don't want them to feel, again, that they got a second class result. But then some people, they'll talk about the toric, and that's not in their range. And then I can say, well, we have another alternative. It's not as precise, but it's certainly better than leaving all your astigmatism there. And that's to do these little slits in the cornea. I'm describing AK. So much as I don't like it either, it's become so second nature. And I think it kind of reinforces to people that this is just the way it is. I'm not embarrassed about it. And it does let me address anything in terms of charges. Someone will say, well, you know, that's more than my friend paid. And I may explain that there's other things that we might do, you know, in terms of testing and so forth. To me, that's the value.
And so, Arthur, I saw in your presentation all that incredible informed consent that you write down. Do you also have sheets like David had? I love those sheets you had where it discusses each IOL, but it also kind of discusses. It's almost like an informed consent sheet. Do you do something like that? Are you the one who discusses everything with your patients, or has a counselor already discussed? Like, when do the patients find out about IOL options, Arthur, in your office?
So they found out about IOL options quite early on, when they first make their appointments and they sort of figure out what channel they're going into. But it's law in Ireland that the surgeon needs to discuss the consent with them. So I'll bring it up with them. And as David and Steve both said, I do discuss the cost, but not in exact terms. I'd say, look, I don't know what the exact costs are. The front desk will be able to tell you, but I do know it costs about €1,000 more or something than a standard lens. But these are the values, and this is why I think it makes good sense for you. But as David said, there are very good alternatives, such as blended vision, that don't cost anything more. And so it's always for people to walk out with dignity and not feel that because they didn't have the financial power that they're getting a second-rate procedure. I think that's really important.
So, Rich, how do you deal with the patient that comes in and says, you did my friend and you did a trifocal IOL and my friend, and I want a trifocal IOL because I want to have vision just like her or him? How do you consent that patient, maybe even if they have a personality issue or an anatomical issue, that they can't get the same lens as their friend that they're hell-bent on?
Right, I think it's a great question. And what I call sort of the pre-sold patient who knows so-and-so has this and was incredibly happy and it worked well for you. if you don't go through the full informed consent and full validation of the patient, because they already said that's what I want, you can run into problems. And I like the camera analogy for these patients. I like the ice cream store analogy. I say they sell a lot of flavors in the ice cream store, and just because your friend wants one doesn't mean it's the best flavor for you. Let's start at the very beginning and figure out what works well. And, you know, for whatever reason, people sort of, that resonates with them, and it makes some sense that maybe I do wanted something different, and maybe something would work better for me. And it also allows what I think all of us try to deliver, which is a customized solution for the individual patient we're seeing in the lane.
Yes. And anybody else have any different things that they discuss with their patients with that? I like that term, the pre-sold patient, because sometimes I have to talk them out of a lens because they're just, I know they're going to be more of a headache post-op than talking them out of it pre-op. Any pearls, Steve, for talking to that patient?
Well, really, the one I like is what you've already said. When you have a problem patient, to stick with them, schedule them, talk to them. I give my cell phone number to so many patients. I live close to the office. I tell them, look, I'll see you anytime. Just so much to do that, stick with them. The last, maybe the last pearl I would give in general, and I mentioned it, is when you're talking about cost to them, try to keep that to as few as options as possible. It's really stupefying to try to have so many different add-ons and all. We really just don't want to confuse them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I have a very standardized sheet that just talks about toric IOLs, not the different kinds of toric IOLs, you know, a multifocal versus a trifocal or an EDF IOL are kind of all put into the same profile. And then I pick what's best suited once I hear what their visual outcomes are. David, did you have a pearl around that as well?
Well, you know, I was going to just say, you mentioned the handout. It takes a little time, but think of how many times you have got to explain over and over again, you know, a EDOF lens or something. Just write out your spiel. And I think that, you know, when you get into informed consent, and then you're starting to use the word risk, and that'll sometimes turn the patient off. They want to say, I just want something simple. I just want the basic cataract surgery. So the FAQ is a way to put it on paper, and you're sort of saying, will I be guaranteed to not need glasses? No, there's a chance you might need, you know, we might not hit the refractive target. And it's really helpful then afterwards, when you have got these handouts that they have, or you have them printed up, they're on your website, you can see where I said over here, sometimes people need an enhancement with the PRK, you know, because we didn't hit it with the first putt. So I do think that taking the time to do that, you know, just what we hate is the 1 hour phone call discussion, post-op chair time when someone really is unhappy.
Yes. Well, I want to thank everybody on this panel. This has been a great discussion, and all the talks today have been enlightening, and the whole 20 Happy module. Thank you to Kendall and David for inviting us all, and to ASCRS for thinking this up, because this has been very invaluable, I think, for many of us, even seasoned professionals who have been doing this for a while. I've learned so much from my colleagues. You all might be getting personal emails saying, send me your stuff so that I can review it. And I'm sure we're all open to questions from anybody, but I just want to remind everybody that we do have 3 breakout rooms from 12:45 to about 1:05 p.m. The first room, tips on counseling and educating patients, will include myself, Dr. Wiley, and we have Dr. McCabe with us today as well to help us in that room. Tips on patient evaluation and IOL selection with Drs. Chang, Jackson, and Cummings, and tips on setting and discussing fees and expectations with Drs. Tipperman, Slade, and Stevenson. And you'll get a voting tab at the top of your current screen, and you can choose your room that you can log into. And you can move between the rooms, actually, if you'd like to see what's going on in one of the other rooms. I also like to remind all the participants that right after us at 1:15, there is a corporate event, Mastering Your Patient's Quality of Vision with the iTrace. You go to the 20 Happy website, or you will have been sent an email that you can click on and log into. And I urge you to watch it because Dr. Paul Singh has put together quite an amazing video for this presentation that's quite charming. And I think we have Dr. Stuart Cummings, Dr. Paul Singh, Carolina Roca, and Jesse McKay with David Chang as moderator for that corporate event. So I urge everyone to log on. So we're all going to log off and go back into our individual rooms. So please click on your voting tabs and join us. Thank you, everybody.